mozzarella salted heavy cream to the person who's going to be using it. And someone came up with the genius idea of forming a pouch of mozzarella and literally stuffing it full of this delicious stuff. So I'm going to cut into the burrata with a boning knife.
Bukas ba yung mic ko?
That wonderful stracciatella coming out. I love to serve prosciutto, which is of course a classic Italian cured ham, and a little bit of bread. So I'm literally going to take the bread, cut a nice, generous slice of burrata. Try to cup the cheese like this so that all of the good, creamy inside of the cheese doesn't spill out everywhere. You can put that on top of your slice of bread, dress it up with a little bit of prosciutto, sprinkle it with a little salt. And finally, drizzle a little olive oil on top, and your perfect bite of burrata is ready to go.
Get in and hold tight.
This is provola. Provola is a fresh cheese that is part of the pasta filata family. But the difference between provola and other pasta filata cheeses is that it is firmer and a little bit more aged. Provola and provolone are related. The only difference is that provola is a smaller loaf like this, and provolone tends to be very large. So slicing provola or cheeses like this, a chef's knife is the best tool to use because the cheese is actually quite firm, and so you're going to want a larger knife to help you cut all the way through. I'm going to slice off kind of the end piece here. You can actually eat this cheese outside, but it's going to be a little bit dry for me to sketch with. I would take this cheese and grate it and turn it into macaroni cheese, either salad or so we're going to take our provola, nice thin slices, layer it on. Make myself. This is queso fresco, a mild, fresh avocado cheese from Mexico that can be used in a wide variety of dishes. The cheese can then be eaten very fresh, or it can be salted and aged for more time, in which case it's going to develop a stronger and saltier flavor. Today, I'm going to serve queso fresco in a very simple way, truffled over fresh watermelon with a little bit of mint. Sometimes in the dead of summer, eating a bunch of cheese doesn't sound like the best idea, but very fresh, bright, acidic cheese like queso fresco is a very refreshing all you need is this is feta, a fresh cheese that was originally made in Greece. The thing that makes feta different so packing the feta and aging it in salt brine meant that it could keep for a long period of time. Today I'm going to slice the feta with my chef's knife. Just into slices, and then I'm going to plate it with the olives. Feta and olives are also a great combination because they're from the same part of the world, and so these two foods have evolved over time and complement each other in a beautiful way.
This time the bath is
The
out.
feta, and then finally we will drizzle with a little olive oil. This type of dish is a perfect thing to bring to a picnic or also an appetizer to start off dinner. This is lavza. Lavza is a very dense, thick, and creamy Middle Eastern style cheese that effectively serves yogurt and cheese. It is very bright, tart, lavza can be served with a variety of fresh herbs or dry herbs, and I decided today to serve it with a bit of za'atar, which is a wonderful Middle Eastern spice blend that really complements that creamy, tangy quality of the cheese. Gently sprinkle it on top, and then drizzle with olive oil. This is Parmesan. It's a very fresh white cheese that is not pressed or aged. It has a very fluffy texture. So it's a great blank canvas for a wide range of a little bit of the dill on the top, as well as a little bit of sea salt, and then some crushed black pepper to finish it off. Mix the herbs in. You can enjoy the Parma cheese all on its own, or with a crispy bread like pretzels, crackers, or a toasted baguette. This is mascarpone, pronounced mascarpone in Italian. This is a double or triple crust cheese that originated in the Lombardy region. The terms double cream and triple cream in cheese refer to the overall percentage of butterfat in the cheese. A double cream cheese has anywhere from 60 to 74% butterfat, and a triple cream cheese has 75% butterfat or more, meaning these cheeses are luscious and creamy and silky and decadent. So today I'm going to top the mascarpone with fresh berries, raspberries, blackberries, and blueberries, and sprinkle some of the thyme on top. We're going to dip in some bread. This is halloumi. Traditional halloumi is a semi-firm, fresh cheese that's made from a blend of goat and sheep's milk, and sometimes cow's milk, from the island of Cyprus. In order to be called halloumi, the cheese has to come from Cyprus and being made according to these traditions. The thing that makes halloumi distinctly different from other fresh cheeses is the fact that it has a very low acidity and high melting point. So you can fry it or grill it, and it won't be cheese. Here we have some grilled halloumi, so you can see the difference between what the fresh and uncooked halloumi looks like and you'll see that it roasts and caramelizes in a beautiful way, and it oozes a little bit, but definitely doesn't burn. It holds its shape. You're going to taste the milky and sweet flavors associated with fresh cheeses, but because the cheese really browns and caramelizes in the pan, you're also going to get some more sweet, caramely, and roasted drizzle it with a touch of olive oil, and if it needs a little bit more salt, drizzle some fresh salt and black pepper on top. Located in the Eastern province of Mexico. It has a very salty over top of the corn, and then we are going to just simply tear the cilantro leaves as a garnish on top. There are thousands of different kinds of cheese. I wasn't able to show you every kind of cheese, but the information that I presented will allow you to share and enjoy an incredibly wide variety of cheese with your friends and family.
Too much because I do want the dough to stick to the corn a little bit. I'm going to push the dough in one direction. That's going to create some tension in this direction. What we're working with now, as we push this dough, we're trying to stretch the dough in this direction so we can push that in all different ends. Pulling the bread so we have a nice smooth surface on top of that tool. We're going to go ahead and put this on the proofing board. It's approved for about 2 hours. So check if your bread is a little bit. Just bringing back entirely and erase the thing that you made. It might be a little more time. Just for breads in a professional kitchen, we'll use what we call a mom. It's basically going to hold a razor blade and put this razor blade on the log here. What we're going to do is a box score, so we're going to score around the edges of this bread and allow this bread to open laterally. One key thing with this, you can see here, you want to make sure that those this little bridge of dough is going to pinch that dough together as it bakes in the oven. The bread's going to bake out like this instead of baking in a nice round. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that those two cross over. To finish it, I'm also going to just put a little decorative mark here. Here we have our final baked boule. A great way to test if breads are done is right when they come out of the oven. You can turn them over, just do a real quick tap on the bottom. So it has a nice hollow drum sound to it, tells me that it was baked correctly. The interior of this bread is going to be a little bit tighter than some of the other shapes that we see, both because of the shape and because of the dough. We're going to be using a brioche dough for this. So we're going to take a couple grams of dough. We're going to pull all the edges towards the center. Flip that over. And then the table. Push the dough towards the table in all different directions. And while we're doing it, we're kind of using this whole surface of our hand to move the dough in that circular motion. If you wanted more of a hamburger shape, flatten the dough a little bit. Just going to push it down so that when it proofs, it doesn't turn into like a ball shape, but more of that classic hamburger bun shape. And then we're going to piece of parchment paper. This is our final roll. Once it was about double its original size when we shaped it, gave it an egg wash. Let's cut this open. This is the interior. For a brioche dough like this, you're generally going to have a nice even crumb is what you're looking for. It's going to be nice and soft. So chapeau means hat in French. It's literally going to be a little roll with a tiny little dough hat on top of it. So we're going to start by shaping the roll pretty similar to any roll. We're going to be pulling the sides in, flip that over, and pushing the dough into the board so that it draws towards the center. And then we're going to take a piece of the same dough, and we're going to roll that out. So I pre-rolled out a piece here. We're going to flour this liberally because we don't want this to stick to our roll. We want this to stay clear of our roll so that it bakes up and forms like a little cracker on top of the roll. We're going to cut a little disc there, and then I'm going to flip this over. So this is the top surface of our roll. Ultimately, it's going to be the top surface. There's a little belly button that we have on the bottom of the dough, and we're going to push my finger really right down to the board. So what that does is lock that cap right on top of the roll, and then we'll fold that over. This is the final shape. Here's our final chapeau roll. You can see that the roll underneath proofed up, but the top part kind of stays as a cracker. When it moves, the cracker actually peels away from the bread a little bit, so you wind up having two textures in one roll. It's going to be essentially round brioche shape again, and the difference this time is going to be how we proof the dough. So after we have our round shape, nice surface tension built on that, we're going to put it on the tray with the others. This is going to be nice because the Porkhouse rolls, when they proof, they're going to proof upwards, and it gives you a much different texture than a regular brioche roll would have. So here's our final Porkhouse rolls out of the oven. These were egg washed before going in, and then you can see that they really proofed all together, so they have a really great interior, really nice texture. They stay fresh for a good amount of time because of the height on them. And no. Brioche à tête literally means brioche with a head, and that is what it winds up being. This bread has a pre-shape, so we're going to do a round pre-shape. Pre-shape is going to be an intermediate shape between cut dough and the final shape. So once we have this in round, let this rest for 15-20 minutes, just set this aside, and then we're going to carry on to the final shape. It's nice so you can see that it's loosened up a little bit. We're going to do the final shape with this. So I'm going to take a little bit of flour. I'm going to turn the roll on and roll with my finger here. Kind of get like a bowling. Drop the pin. So I have a little top knot here. I'm going to take this top knot and put it down into the dough. So that's the first stage. And then we're just going to make sure that that little head part, so this would be the head, the tête, brioche à tête, it's going to lock in there. So the fingers just push right down to the board to really lock that dough in. The characteristic mold for this brioche part mold like this. We're going to put a little bit more in there. And then we're going to go ahead and place the final shape in the tart mold. Okay, here we have our final brioche à tête. You can tell by the fact that the head is still on it that we proofed it the correct amount of time. Right before the bake, I brushed it with a little bit of egg wash. nice and soft and airy. Baguette, which is kind of like the holy grail of French breads. Everyone knows it. If I go to a French bakery, it's going to be the bread that I'm going to try first to decide if I'm going to try anything else at that bakery. Up till now, we've been doing exclusively round shapes. So this is going to have a different pre-shape and then also a different final shape, which is going to lead us to what you know to be the baguette shape. Pre-shape is going to be a little like the football shape. It's going to be an intermediate shape between this piece of dough and the ultimate baguette shape. So while we're pre-shaping, what I'm doing is building some tension in this direction, which is going to be important to help our baguette hold up both in the final proof and in the oven. And I'm also kind of extending it a little bit. So basically an intermediate between that piece of dough and what will be the baguette dough. Alright, so my baguette pre-shaped has rested for about 15 to 20 minutes. I'm going to the final shape. First thing I'm going to do is flip it over. So after I did the pre-shape, there's a seam on the bottom. I'm going to flip that over so the seam is on top. I'm going to give that a light stretch. First step in the baguette shaping is going to be to fold the top down. Folding this down and pushing back against the dough. The next step is going to be imagining a line right here. I'm going to bring that line to the edge and form a seam. So I'm catching it with the heel of my hand, pulling it down, and that is, again, giving that final burst of tension along the cross-section of the baguette and bringing it to that final baguette shape. The last thing we're going to do is extend it out. Here's where the extension our hands over and bring that dough out to the length that we want. On the end, I'm going to taper it, so just push down a little bit on the board, and that's basically our shape. So after we're done with one, it's a linen cloth that we proof bread on. So it's well tempered with flour, so nothing really sticks to it. And then, as you'll see, we'll put that baguette shape there, seam side down, and we'll use the couche to actually support it into its baguette shape. So this you can continue to shape, put multiple baguettes in here. This has rested for about 20 minutes, ready to go in the oven. We want to score along the center line of the baguette, so this bread is going to open this way, a nice oval cross section. We're going to do 5 cuts on this. So I'm going to imagine the middle cut is going to be right here, the third cut. So I'm going to go ahead and just start the cuts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, so here we have our 2 final baked baguettes. You can see they have a nice golden brown, crispy crust on them. A lot of scores here. When we score them along the center line of the baguette. You can see now how those scores have opened as a result. Really great characteristic of the baguette. The sign of some good shaping is when you get a little bit of ridge here, what we would call the ears of the baguette. You go ahead and cut these open. This is a great crumb for a baguette. What you're looking for is a nice open hole structure. There's a little bit of regularity, but for the most part, it's through the entire cross-section of the baguette. Perfect. This is our final baguette shape. We've already made the pre-shape on this. It's relaxed. It's proofed for about 20 minutes, and it's ready to be baked. Right before the bake, we're going to cut this baguette shape into the épi shape. Épi is French for shaft, as in shaft of wheat. So the final shape on this ultimately should look like a shaft of wheat. So we're just using our scissors at an angle, being sure not to cut all the way through the breads. There's still a little bit of a connection here so that that stays together in the final bake. And then this is ready to go in the oven. You can see that the bread opens where we cut it a little bit, which preserves the open interior that a baguette would have. The end result is that it's kind of a series of pull-apart rolls. Batard in French actually means bastard. So it was said that this was kind of between a boule and a baguette, so it was like a bastard of a shape between those two shapes. So we're going to do a round pre-shape on this. Again, we don't want this is just a pre-shape. We want it to be really tight. We're just going to set this aside, let this rest. Seams are seated on the bottom at this point. We're going to flip that over on the bottom surface. We're going to fold down the top, similar to the baguette shape. Push back a little bit. Building strength in this direction again. As a final step for this, we're going to similar to the baguette shape, which was just sealed in one direction. This is going to be sealed all towards the center so that it gives you that football shape.
Di ako happy.
So I'm going to start on one end. I'm going to draw that down and seal it. And sealing all towards the center point here. So you can see already that that has like a half moon shape to it. Bring that forward and just give it a little bit of a roll. Just bring those edges out. We have a seam here. The seam's going to go on the bottom as that proofs. And then right before baking, we're going to score this as well. So a good typical score that you see a lot is right down the center line, 2 cuts. And that's going to allow the bread to open again. So here is the final baked batard. You can see the 2 scores that I did. So we're going to go ahead and cut this open, check out the interior.
Never mind. Attack this zone, my friend.
There you go. You can see we have decently open, similar to the boule. This will be a great general all-purpose loaf. So we did a round pre-shape on this earlier. We're going to be shaping this round pre-shape into a batard shape. This is essentially a second pre-shape. So we're going to do the batard shaping again, folding that all over towards the center. We're going to let this batard sit in this shape for about 15-20 minutes. And then we're going to get a rolling pin and do the final shape of the fendue. We're going to put a pretty good amount of flour on the board for this one. We're going to roll the bread in the flour. We're going to use the rolling pin to pleat the center of it, going really firmly on this right down to the board. And that's going to really lock that center of dough together and essentially change the shape of the dough. We're going to pinch the sides together, and then this gives us our final fondue shape. All right, here we have our final fondue shape out of the oven. So you can kind of see the way that that center pleat expressed itself in the bake. It holds down the bread and gives you 2 pieces that have some good volume to them, similar to a baguette that was unscored. It adds a little variation to the look of the final shape, and it's pretty attractive.
We neutralized that zone. Now let's
We're going to be making a few braided loaves here. We're going to be doing a single strand, a 3-strand, and a 6-strand braided loaf. We're using a brioche dough here, an enriched dough. So we're going to start with a rectangular pre-shape. So we're going to pull the dough down so that the rope will have some structure to it. We're going to do a series of those to get all of our pre-shapes ready. So we let our strands rest. Final pre-shape elongate them a little bit more and taper the edge. So we're going to go ahead and start with which is essentially a form of a knot that we're going to make with 1 strand. So we're going to carry that over about in thirds, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. We're going to thread this one through. We're going to twist that and pull that end right through there. Gives you like a nice little knot shape. We're going to move into our 3-strand braid. So we're going to first start by kind of putting those 3 strands together. And then we're going to do a typical braid here. So just one over the other.
Tagal.
Not pulling too tight, we don't want too much tension, we might start to rip the dough. And then when we get to the end, we're going to pinch those ends together. Same thing here, we're going to pinch those ends together. And then what I'd like to do is flip it over. You can bring all those tips to the bottom. And then we turn the dough over. We have a 5-strand braid. Now for the 6-strand braid. This one we are going to bring them all together like we did with the 3-strand. Pinch the tips together.
Mahina tayo, sis.
And then I'm going to pull this first strand over here. Bring this one down with this group. Don't worry about this part here. We'll clean that up at the end. Pull this one across, keeping these in 2 separate segments here, and then pull this down, pull across and down, across and down. You see I'm doing it pretty loose too again, so we don't have any tearing. Across and down, across. Ken, when you get to the end, you're gonna just pinch together the end pieces here, like we did with the other braid. Pinch them together. Again, we're gonna flip that over, bring the pieces up, pinch them on the bottom to hide all our straggly ends there. Give that a nice roll. And then we have these 6-stranded braid. Here are our final baked loaves. We can see kind of how forgiving they are, and they wind up looking pretty nice, even if your braiding's not perfect. I finished the single and the 3-strand with some egg wash and pearl sugar, and the 6-strand has just some egg wash on it. This again was made with a brioche dough, so nice even crumb, and would be a perfect vehicle for some butter and some jam, or to just rip off and eat. Does the trick. We're going to be shaping the Kaiser roll from a semolina dough. Gives it a little more extensibility, which will be great for this shape because it's pretty intense. So we're going to start with a piece of dough and give it a rectangular pre-shape. And that's our first pre-shape. So we're going to let this rest, and then I'll show you how to knot a Kaiser roll. Rectangular pre-shape for our Kaiser roll has rested. It's going to allow me to extend it a little bit more. We're going to give ourselves a pretty good rope here, and then we're essentially going to tie this into a knot, but it's going to be key that we go through on both ends of this knot. And then we're going to connect the ends, give them a little pinch, flip that over, gives you that classic Kaiser star on the front of it. We could also finish this with poppy seed is a really nice option for this, so just put a little bit of water on that. Dip that right into the seeds, and then we're going to set this on a pan, and that's going to proof. Here we have our final baked Kaiser roll with poppy seeds on it. You can see how what was originally a knot shape kind of proofed together and gave us that nice characteristic star shape on top of the roll. This has a great interior. You can see a little evidence of the shaping, but for the most part it was proofed together. Go ahead and give this a try. Delicious. Very mild bread, nice thin crust.
That zone is now ours. I thought we cancelled that.
Alright, next we're going to be shaping an iconic New York bread, the bagel. I'm using a semolina dough here for ease of extensibility. We did a rectangular shape on this earlier. We're going to extend this out ends to form it. And there's your bagel. After this final shape, it's going to proof for a little bit. This shape then gets boiled, typically in water with a little bit of malt syrup in it, and then it gets put into an oven and baked. Okay, here we have our final boiled and baked bagel. You see a pretty typical tight crumb, nice chewy interior, and a light crisp on the outside, which comes from that boil, and then the final bake. Pretzel has two pre-shapes, so it starts with a round pre-shape, go into a second pre-shape, which is a rectangular pre-shape.
Naunahan ako!
Just to start it on that shape towards pretzel, and now we're going to let this pre-shape rest for another 20 minutes. Alright, now we have the final shape. We're going to roll it out to give it a little bit more length and get it closer to the strand length that we need for the pretzel. We're going to take these two arms here, cross them over twice, and flip them into the center, connect them to the body of the cup here. They usually get a score across the bottom here, and there you have the pretzel. Here we have our final baked pretzel. The pretzel rested in the refrigerator for 20 to 30 minutes. Once it's firmed up, it gets dipped in a solution of lye, and then it gets baked till it's got a nice golden brown color. Pretty typical bread shape. The Pullman is a reference to Pullman railroad car, a box car. It's where it got its shape from. You can imagine wheels down here. So a rectangular bread is going to be dictated by the dimensions of the pan, essentially. So for the rectangular pre-shape, just going to fold this down. We're going to try and give a little bit of length on this. Fold that down. So that is our pre-shape. We're going to let this rest for 15-20 minutes. We're going to do the final shape on this one. So I have the seam from the pre-shape is on the bottom at this point. I'm going to flip it over so that we have the seam on top. And I'm going to give it another fold down. Again, introducing some more tension in this direction to give that pan loaf a nice dome on top. To allow the tension that I've built. And then we'll just roll it out. Once that's done, side down. Go ahead and oil the pan lightly. This loaf is rather large, probably going to take a bit to proof. We're going to put this in, seam side down, give it a little bit of a dusting, and then just push that in there just to extend it out. Here's our perfect. So interior is nice and moist still, perfect for your picnic. This is what I would call a batter bread. Right here I have 100% rye. So rye has protein in it, has gluten in it, but not a type of gluten that's usable in building structure. So 100% rye is always going to be a little bit wetter. This one is basically going to be oiling a pan and scraping the batter into the pan. Really no shaping involved and no pre-shaping. So I'm going to go ahead and scrape this in. So this is about 2 kilos of 100% rye dough, and that'll be good for this Pullman here. It is yeasted, it's a sourdough bread, so it will rise, and we do need some room for that. So basically it's going to go in like that. I'll wet my hands here, and we can just pat down this batter so that it rises evenly across the dough. And a nice way to finish this is with a little bit of rye flour. This gives you like a nice cracky finish on the final loaf. Here is a segment of our 100% rye Pullman. This bread's really nice, sliced thin in my opinion. It's got a lot of sour to it. It's really great.
Bitch!
Because that fat kind of like works nicely with the sour on it. It's also really great with smoked fish, like smoked salmon, smoked trout. Again, the fattiness of those fishes plays really well with a sour bread like this. It's not really a shape on the focaccia. We're going to olive oil a pan pretty liberally. So we're going to take a very wet dough. It's an 80% hydration white wheat dough. You can see why we're using a lot of olive oil here. We're going to just spread that on the pan. Put a little bit on top also. We're going to be spreading this gradually over the course of maybe an hour. So it's okay if the top's a little bit oiled. It'll be a lot easier to manage that way. So we're going to just let this sit for about half an hour after it's got to the final shape. This has sat for maybe about an hour in total. I was spreading it every 15-20 minutes until it filled out the pan. Right before putting it in the oven, you can go ahead and finish this with some rosemary and some Maldon salt, real nice. Here we have our finished focaccia. You can see that got some nice golden color. It's still also very soft and flexible, so it has some nice moisture in it still. If you overcook this, it can get a little too crispy. So we're going to go ahead and cut it open, see what the interior looks like. So you can see already, the interior is really nice. Nice open crumb structure. Perfect. Ciabatta is a really easy bread to shape. It's also really wet. So ciabatta actually means slipper in Italian. The final bread shape is kind of similar to a little.
Help! Oh my God, dalawa sila!
So the final shape here, I'm going to dust the center a little bit, and we're just going to fold the dough over once, fold it over again. Now it's sitting on that seam I created, and that's basically it. Right before we go ahead and bake that, we're going to flip that over. So what was the top side will be on top, and that seam that we created could open the oven a little bit. Create a little bit of ridge.
I swear.
Nice characteristic ciabatta
Tatlo
crust.
pa, oh my god.
Really nice, really light.
Walang nakakita nun.
Would be especially perfect dipped in some great olive oil. Next we're going to be shaping, or maybe more accurately cutting English muffins. So English muffins are yeasted dough. Well, we're using a whole wheat dough here. We're going to take English muffin dough and just give it a light rollout. You want it to be about, I don't know, half an inch thick. Go ahead and let this dough rest for a minute. The dough is nice and relaxed. When we cut our circles using our ring mold, we're going to rest in this final cut shape on a sheet tray with a little bit of cornmeal.
Ayaw na nga. Bobo.
Muffin not stick to the pan, and also it's going to give us a nice little texture on the bottom when we griddle. So here we have our final English muffins. These have been griddled and finished in the oven. So you can see a little bit of cornmeal left on here. This is the surface that we proofed the English muffin. It sat on that cornmeal. Instead of using a knife to cut them, I like to split them with a fork. Gives you nice little nooks and crannies there that once you toast it will hold all that butter you're going to put on it. And then you'll open that up. You have a really nice open interior on that English muffin. So that's what we're looking for. All those little crooks and crags in there. Next we're going to make a fougasse, which is a really beautiful shape. We're going to be using a whole wheat dough for this. We're going to start with a triangular pre-shape, which is the first time we're going to see that, pretty specific to this. We're just going to fold in the side here. We're going to fold in the other side, see the beginning of that triangle, and then real simply just fold up the bottom. So we have that in a triangle now. So we're going to let this rest for about 15-20 minutes, and then we're going to come back and roll it out. And then just really lightly roll this out. We don't want to eliminate all those air bubbles that we have in there from the fermentation. We want to keep this nice and light. We just want to get it into what will ultimately be our final fougasse shape. So relax. Go ahead and put this on a sheet tray. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it right down the middle. Spread so you can see that opening. It'll also give you some nice crust surfaces here. And then the rest of the design is really up to you. You can use a credit card. Once you have those cuts, go ahead and spread those out. So you can see that the dough is really nicely rested. If it hadn't been rested, that gluten structure kind of would have taken over and closed these holes right back up. It's really easy to take apart and use it dips. Also just eat on its own. The lavash that we're going to make is a crispy lavash. It's essentially going to be a cracker. We're going to start with a whole wheat dough. We're going to start by just rolling it out a little bit with a rolling pin. We want to keep that nice and floured. Once we have it about here, we're going to go ahead and put it on the back of an oiled sheet tray. So this is going to be our new spreading surface for this so that we can get it nice and thin. So I'm going to oil that up, make sure the dough doesn't stick to it. And we'll go ahead and throw that dough right on there. We're going to let this rest for 15 to 20 minutes here. We're going to go ahead and start to spread this out. So I'm just going to very gently spread this. I'm spreading from the center so that we don't have a thick part in the middle and thin pieces around the edge. But as possible. So spreading this around. Looks like we're pretty much there. Don't worry about the little edge parts here. We're going to go ahead and trim that. So it's been about 15 to 20 minutes that this lavash dough has rested in its final spread shape. We're going to go ahead and trim the edges. This is not necessary, just to make it a little bit thinner. This should be like any shape we want. Finish up sesames here. Really just sprinkle on some poppy as well. So here we have our final baked crispy lavash. So go ahead, chase these. Perfect, great texture. They're perfect for dips. They're also great as they are for wrist. So when you keep it in an airtight container, they'll last. Also pretty simple. We're going to take a whole wheat dough. We're going to roll this pretty much to length.
Yes! Oh my God! Nanalo din.
Same thickness. We're going to let this rest in place on our breadsticks. They don't spring back too much. Alright, so we have our rested breadstick dough. We're going to go ahead and cut these, get them ready for the bake. I'm just going to use a pizza wheel here, and we're going to cut strips. We roll this out to about 1/4 inch. I'm going to cut these at about
Happy naman ako
1/4 inch as
dun.
well. So
Kahit medyo
theoretically, the
shitty
cross-section here is
push.
going to be like a square. So, I have our sheet tray here. I'm going to take the breadsticks that we cut and just spread them out here. If there's some thick parts, you can kind of stretch those out a little bit. You can finish these with whatever you'd like.